The Crown Victoria was a flagship trim of the 1955 to 1956 Ford Fairlane, which evolved to the top trim line of the LTD series and then becoming its very own model in 1992, which maintained a body-on-frame design and V8 power. Meanwhile, their competitors had switched to unibody vehicle construction for their sedans. Many still miss the Crown Vic today after its cancellation in 2011, and the cops especially.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
This is my first actual video since almost a year ago, and I've decided to review the Ford Crown Victoria as my first video, since this is a rather special car to me. And another quirk is that the Crown Vic was the last body-on-frame sedan of this time, including the Grand Marquis and Lincoln Town Car. I'm also not going to include the Ford's brothers, which I already mentioned, the Grand Marquis and Town Car, and also the Marauder, as I see them as also great cars, but in other ways of the Crown Victoria, which warrant separate videos for these cars, hence why I'm not including them in this video. For the 1955 model year, the Ford Fairlane was introduced to the Ford model range as the flagship full-size car range. Placed above one of the higher trims of Victoria, the Crown Victoria came along as the flagship model at the Fairlane for 2 years, from 1955 to 1956. The Crown Victoria had a B-pillared roof line, similar to the 1954 XM800 concept from Mercury. Although changed in angle, it was fitted with a wide stainless steel band on the B-pillar, which went over the roof of the car, unlike Victoria's hardtop roof with no B-pillar present. This was also featured in the Fairlane Crown Victoria Skyliner with a fixed acrylic glass sunroof which formed the roof ahead of the B-pillar. Also, for 1956, the Lifeguard option package was included with the Fairlane Crown Victoria as an option, featuring a deep center steering wheel with flexible spokes, double grip door latches which was intended to prevent the ejection of passengers during a crash, and a safety rear view mirror to reduce the broken glass if it had to be shattered. Then, for the redesign of the Ford model line in 1957, the Crown Victoria was retired from the Fairlane trim range with no replacements underway.
So this is the car everybody's been fussing over.
Yeah, Grandma. It's an 84 Ford LTD Crown Victoria.
Big enough to seat the church usher board. Soft padding too, kind of like your grandma.
Oh, Grandma.
What's that thing?
The optional trip-minded computer.
Are you sure you can afford all of this?
With the LTD Crown Victoria? No problem.
Oh, let me out right here so Mabel can see us.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Then, after a 23-year-long wait, the Crown Victoria made a return in 1980, although it was still just a trim of the LTD, being the top trim level of the car. The steel B-pillar band was revived for the Crown Victoria, but was now aluminum and skinnier. Unlike later LTDs, which were available with smaller engine options, the LTD Crown Vics were only available with V8s, which initially had the 4.9 liter as a standard engine, which Ford rounded up to 5.0. Or a 5.8 was available as an option. Sadly, the 5.8 only had 140 horsepower despite the larger displacement. In 1981, the standard 4.9-liter V8 was downsized to a 4.2-liter V8 with no power to brag about, being that it was only able to blow out a puny 120 horsepower. You were still able to get the optional 5.8, but you got handed a low blow by the government with gas guzzler tax, unless you were able to convince the IRS that your vehicle was intended for law enforcement purposes, which was probably unlikely. In 1983, the LTD line split into two different models. The LTD, which was confusingly a mid-sized Fox body-based sedan that replaced the Granada mid-sized sedan, and the LTD Crown Victoria, a full-sized car which remained on the Panther platform that had begun production in the year 1978. The Mercury Grand Marquis also joined the LTD Crown Vic to become a standalone model that year, and the smaller Marquis, without the Grand prefix, joined the LTD on the Fox body platform. And while having a separate roofline from its sedan counterparts, the LTD Country Squire station wagon shared its interior trim with the Crown Victoria sedan. And by the year 1987, the two-door models of the LTD Crown Victoria were discontinued due to representing less than 5% of total sales by that point in time, and also due to the fact that the car was due for a refresh in 1988, making it a good time to drop two-door models. The refresh kept the doors and roof line, but it did have a new front and rear end fascia redesign, which also carried over to the wagon model, which still had fake wood side paneling. And in 1990, the first interior redesign was made, focusing on the dashboard due to new safety regulations that year, which included the driver's side airbag, and many options were made standard to streamline the production process, which Ford had tried predicting that it would boost sales numbers. However, that didn't happen, with sales dropping more than 50% in 1990. The replacement, however, had been in development since 1987, which was good news.
They all laughed at Christopher Columbus when he said the world was round.
They said a more powerful new V8 engine would only speed your trip to the gas station. They haven't driven the new Ford Crown Victoria.
Ho, 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 who's got the last laugh now?
More powerful, more fuel efficient, more than ever it's the new Crown Victoria.
That's nice.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
The new Crown Victoria was first shown to the public in November of 1990, with production of the new Crown Victoria now having dropped the 11-year-old LTD nameplate when production finally started in January of that year, being sold as a 1992 model. It had used sheet metal with a more aerodynamic appearance to look more like the then popular Taurus that debuted a few years earlier than the new Crown Victoria. The Flame was the panther platform that the LTD Crown Vic once had. However, it had received many new improvements since its development in 1978. This new generation of Crown Victoria also dropped the Country Squire wagon model, leaving the void to be filled by the Taurus wagon, which was the only large Ford wagon available at that point. The car had to comply with cafe standards like every other car back then, or corporate average fuel economy. Large weight vehicles like the Crown Vic, along with the Mercury Grand Marquis, its twin, weren't exactly helping to make the average lower. So, instead of Ford offering smaller engine options, or maybe downsizing, Ford got around to this problem by having both the Crown Vic and Grand Marquis built in Canada, which allowed them to be classified as imports, creating a loophole which allowed them to avoid the gas guzzler taxes that CAFE would have placed on American-built cars like these. Although the Mercury Grand Marquis was built alongside the Crown Vic, the 1992 refresh made the cars have two different bodies and wildly different front ends in my opinion, with only the front doors and windshield being shared between the twins. This was a pretty big departure from the end of the previous generations, where the two cars were almost identical to each other in classic American automaker fashion. Engine options were streamlined with a new single overhead cam V8 engine called the Modular V8, which also appeared in the Ford Mustang, or the New Edge Mustang, which was able to produce a 210 horsepower with dual exhaust in the Crown Victoria, a big difference from the measly 140 horsepower and 120 horsepower you got with previous generation vehicles. This was the only engine choice for the Crown Vic, even in the other cars made for police duty, as well as the Grand Marquis and even the Lincoln Town Car. In 1992, the Crown Victoria was very unique among this generation to have a front end that only lasted for that year, which was unique because of having no grille in between the headlights, which was meant to emulate the design of the Ford Taurus, which turned many potential buyers off because of their striking similarity to the Taurus up front, which made Ford add a new front end design for 1993, which was only for show because the main air intake was actually below the front bumper. The police versions of the car were now officially designated as the P71, much like the earlier P72 that served with the LTD Crown Vic. The Ford's market share in police car sales had grown thanks to Chrysler binning its rear-driven police cars to Dodge Diplomat and Plymouth Grand Fury back in 1989, and Ford's market share grew even larger because of the ugly redesigns of the Chevy Caprice and Impala in 1991. Even though, much like the Crown Victoria, it was a body-on-frame rear-driven sedan, mainly because of the once again ugly redesign, which turned off many potential buyers, which resulted in its cancellation in 1996. Chrysler did try to recapture the market success they had with the police package for the Dodge Intrepid. but the fact that it was a unibody construction and being front-driven made it nowhere near as popular as the P-71 offered by Ford at the time. As the 1990s went on, very little changed to Crown Victoria, and non-fleet sales had dropped below the Grand Marquis. Because of this, the second generation Crown Vic and Grand Marquis began looking more alike, doing away with the different roof lines and rear windows, which made the cars look almost identical, which was like looking at a GMC Sierra and Chevy Silverado from the 2000s from the side. The revision did include the front grille and tail lights, however. Ford tried not to make the same mistake that GM did with the Prius and Impala from 1991, making the second generation styling rather simplistic and not as controversial as the redesign of the GM sedans were. They also started marketing their police cars for 1999 as the Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, or CVPI for short, as many others call it, with badging on the trunk, even though it was still called the P-71 by Ford internally. The same year, police departments could order the P-71 with what was called the Street Appearance Package, which is just a technical name for unmarked police car. And of course, anybody living in the 1990s or 2000s knew immediately that if a Crown Vic was behind you, you better check how fast you were going, because the chances of someone driving a Crown Vic that was a police car was pretty damn slim. And it also didn't really help that the quote-unquote unmarked police car usually came with the spotlight on the A-pillar, making the feature a dead giveaway. Ford hadn't given up the attempt of selling the Crown Vic to civilian buyers in the early 2000s yet, with the introduction of the LX and LX Sport trims, which added more creature comforts and performance features, although it still had the 4.6-liter modular V8. Improvements to the engine over its lifespan of this car allowed the engine to produce as much as 240 horsepower in the civilian version of the Crown Vic and up to 250 in the police versions. Sadly, the Crown Vic was never offered with the 302 horsepower version of the 4.6 modular V8 featured in the Mercury Marauder, a high-performance trim of the Grand Marquis that was offered in 2003. That was led up to the chopping block due to poor sales only a year later. By the mid-2000s, about 95% of all sales of the Crown Victoria went to fleets and police versions, which resulted in only 3,000 cars sold to the public in 2006. This was the foundation of the decision to end public sales of the Crown Vic starting in 2008, and also because Ford was already offering a new full-size sedan option, the 500, which replaced the Taurus in 2005. But the 500 would get the Taurus nameplate again. But the Crown Vic's fate was ultimately sealed with the Panther platform planned to end production in 2011, whose body-on-frame design was not able to support electronic stability control, which was now a mandate for all cars sold in the United States and Canada by 2012. With the heartbreaking end of the rear-driven body-on-frame Crown Victoria, Ford's production switched over to the front-wheel drive unibody Taurus. However, back then, many of the tens of thousands of police departments across America had chosen to keep their CVPIs for as long as they could, as they were just simply better than what the police car market was offering at the time. Rear-wheel drive vehicles can jump over curbs with less risk of anything damaging, and the old V8 engines were very reliable, so many remained that parts were still readily available, and having a body-on-frame design meant quicker and much cheaper collision repairs, and many taxi departments wanted the Crown fixed after they had retired from police duty. The loss of the CVPI encouraged Chrysler to return to the police car market with their new rear-driven Dodge Charger as an option. But the Explorer midsize SUV has helped Ford regain its footing in the police market once again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, as that would help me out a ton. And if you have a car that you used to own and would like featured in a new episode, or just a car that you want featured in another episode of this channel, comment in the comment section below, or contact me in the email in my channel description. See you next time.